look at all this, we're joined now by royal expert Rafal Heydel-Mankoo.
Earlier today to royal commentator Rafal Heydel-Mankoo from London.
Going to bring in Rafal Heydel-Mankoo, the editor.
Joining me with more is Rafal Heydel-Mankoo.
Rafal Heydel-Mankoo. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. W studiu Rafał Heydel-Mankoo, royal historian and commentator, czyli historyk rodziny królewskiej i komentator wydarzeń w Pałacu Buckingham.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Dzień dobry.
And on Skype we have Jenny Bond.
Joining me here in studio now is Rafal Heydel-Mankoo from the Monarchist League of Canada. Welcome, Rafal.
Good morning.
Let's take a look at the live shot, because although the funeral begins within 60 minutes now, the dignitaries have started to arrive.
That's right. We've seen a steady stream of dignitaries arriving over the course of the hour.
And he is the patron of the British.
Yeah, I'm joined here by Rafal Heydel-Mankoo, who knows the relationship, I think, between the royal family and Canada particularly quite well.
The Queen be given an official invitation to attend ceremonies. Isn't this a matter of tradition? Has she not gone to all the previous ones since she's been Queen?
Well, I think what we have here is a comparatively rare example of the otherwise finely tuned French diplomatic machine getting itself quite mangled, and that's provided the British tabloid press with a chance to engage in their favorite pastime, or French bashing.
So, Rafal, what is the official comment, response, reaction from the royal family to this new edition?
Well, they're all delighted. I mean, really, for any royal watcher and for the royal family, this has been an extremely eventful few weeks, from the highs of the two royal engagements to the low of the attack on the Prince of Wales car. And now again we have happy news to end the year with the announcement of the birth of a baby girl, 8 pounds 8 ounces, extremely healthy. And as you said, this is the Queen's first great-grandchild, and the Queen is the first sovereign since Queen Victoria's time to have been a great-grandparent, although Victoria had 16 great-grandchildren, so quite a way to go before the Queen married.
Do the papers have a right to publish this kind of material? Certainly there is an appetite for it out there with the public.
Well, appetites or not, I think the rule of law should stand paramount, and certainly the Prince of Wales is the holder, the sole exclusive holder of copyright over material that he
Or Diana. Rafal, what are your thoughts at the end of this service?
Well, I mean, what we saw here was a tribute paid to Diana the mother and to Diana the humanitarian. It was a fitting tribute and a way to give thanks. But I also heard a plea to let this ceremony, this tribute, mark the point from which we look forward. Not forgetting, but not obsessing.
There's a bit of a controversy, a bit of a tizzy over tea towels, because as I understand it, Rafal, the palace has said those are not considered in good taste. Where does that stand?
It's only the British who could put tea towels onto the front page of their newspapers.
This morning in our Toronto studios by Rafal Heydel-Mankoo. He is with the Monarchist League of Canada, and he is a gentleman, good morning Rafal, who is able to tell us in detail some of the processions, some of the traditions, some of what we're seeing here this morning. Rafal, good morning.
Good morning to you. Yes, we have just seen the Mall was the great procession route laid down by Edward VII as a suitable avenue leading up to Buckingham Palace for state occasions. It's seen happy times and, as we see here, sad times. And there is a statue of King George VI, arguably one of our greatest constitutional monarchs and loving husband of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Sir Winston Churchill, the last person to receive such a magnificent funeral and procession. Not since *65 have Britons, or indeed anyone in the Commonwealth, seen something of this magnitude. And now the coffin approaches the catafalque, the ceremonial funeral platform, draped in purple velvet, garnet felt, and decorated with gold braid. And once the coffin is placed on that catafalque, the lying in state of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, will commence. Now we see the clergy processing down the great sweep of the nave. the moderator of the Church of Scotland, His Eminence, Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor, and there the great Cross of Canterbury, and Dr. George Carey, the Archbishop of Canterbury, the 103rd Archbishop, and the first not to have attended Oxford and Cambridge, just showing the changes that have taken place over the course of the century through which the Queen Mother lived. And here now we see at the top of the screen Garter King of Arms and Lord Lyon King of Arms, the senior heralds of the land, the great officers of arms. We heard Garter reading out the stars and titles of the Queen in his resplendent tabard of red and gold, muted by a black sash. And now the bearer party lift the coffin of the Queen Mother, who for the last time will leave this abbey in which she was married, in which she saw her husband crowned and her daughter crowned, now to make her final journey through London, a city she knew so well and that loved her dearly.
Thank you for spending this moment with us and this morning with us. Your contributions have been invaluable and give us a real sense of the history and the pride that is attached to the royal family.
Everyone likes to make out, and for the last few years the Queen has been covering up for a shortfall in her expenses. She hasn't had a pay rise, if we can use that term. The civil list, which is the government's payout to the Queen, hasn't risen since 1990. So despite having made draconian cutbacks in Buckingham Palace and the royal household, the Queen is trying to live in 2010 on a budget that was designed for 1990, despite the inflationary increases that have gone up by 80%. So she's digging into her own personal reserves to about £7 million a year.
Particularly if you're a monarchist like the guy sitting beside us.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, even though I couldn't be there, the next best thing was to be here with two such enthusiastic monarchists as yourselves. So wonderful.
Constitutional quandary, because it will require the consent of Canada, of Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica. There are 16 realms, all of whom shared the same sovereign. So to change the Act of Settlement for the throne would require all of their consent. Otherwise, you might have the nightmarish scenario where somebody succeeds to the throne in Britain, but not in Canada. So you could have one different king for Britain and Canada.
Tell us about the mood in London today.
Oh, well, it's a complete change. I mean, what we had 10 years ago was the greatest crisis since 1936, since the abdication of King Edward VIII when he wanted to marry the American divorcee Mrs. Simpson. And you really can't compare then with now. On the streets of London in '97, there was a very dangerous feeling around. One could almost smell history in the making, almost revolutionary times, not quite, but there were moments when the sentiment seemed to be going in that direction. And here we are 10 years later, and all of that ill feeling has been forgotten. This is a time to give thanks, to commemorate, to pay tribute.
And there's Barbara Windsor, Babs, the Cockney Sparrow, who shot to fame with the Carry On films as that rambunctious little nymph, and later on became the pub owner at the EastEnders, the Queen Vic pub, where she can still be seen. Dearly beloved by probably one of the most popular television personalities in the UK.
I don't know, you probably do know whether or not the royal family had ever shared that particular balcony with a commoner in that way up until that moment, and to see her come out 50 years later on that same balcony and acknowledge the cheers of the veterans and the people of London, I mean, it must have just sent a chill up the spine of everybody there.
And I think it showed to a new generation that although we think of the Queen Mother as our favourite grandmother or great-grandmother swathed in blue or pink chiffon, she was very much the iron fist in the velvet glove, and that iron will and resolute spirit served as a symbol of defiance against Nazi aggression. And indeed, only Winston Churchill was her equal at that time for mobilizing a nation, for standing up to tyranny. And when we look at that balcony, we can remember that there were other people in Europe in the 30s who stood on balconies, the Hitlers and the Mussolinis and Stalins of this world. And the crowds that were forced to cheer didn't cheer out of free will. They cheered because there was a Gestapo around the corner compelling them to adore. But the adoration that we have for the monarchy, for the royal family, for the Queen Mother, comes from free will and from love. We cheer the royal family because we want to.
All right, Rafal, some tremendous final words, and we appreciate your help this morning in walking us through this. And all.
We're back on Michael Curran Live. Ethics in Ottawa. Sort of oxymoronic, isn't it, in a way? You're very into this.
Well, I am, because I think poor Don Boudria has had a
raw deal on this. There will always be Diana loyalists who will just
not believe, refuse to believe that she was killed in a drunk driving accident, don't you think?
Well, there will be, but I mean, what else can one do? I mean, after spending so many man-hours, so many millions of dollars, so much time looking into this, there really is nothing left that can be done. We have to face facts. New technology has come to light in the 8 years since her death. They've looked at the Mercedes. They've shown that there has been no tampering at all with the brakes, with the seat belts, whatever. This really was a tragedy.
He's going to be here as well, which will be fun to see. And Michael Parkinson, of course, the great interviewer, probably one of the best interviewers in the world.
And Cliff Richard,
aside from yourselves.
And thank you very much.
Well, you're coming back.
And this is the Order of Merit here.
Those who study the monarchy and its complex system of honors say Chrétien's is one of the highest.
The past roll reads like a who's who of our greatest 20th and 19th century figures. We have Florence Nightingale as a member, Albert Schweitzer, Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Winston
have your
Churchill.
observations on what you've seen so far from London.
Well, I think what we've seen is one of the most spectacular occasions of pomp and pageantry in the Commonwealth for, well nigh 25 years. Possibly only the wedding of the Prince of Wales in '81 comes close to anything of this, certainly in my lifetime. I was one when the Silver Jubilee took place, so for me this is a very, very special occasion.
There's no mood appetite in this country for constitutional squabbles. We've had it with Quebec separation, Charlottetown and Meech Lake. We know how troublesome that was for the nation. There is no appetite or desire for change in this country, and there's no need to keep forcing people to try and do this because they're not willing to do it. You'll have to convince them that it's worth going through the expense. You'll have to essentially get every single province in the nation to agree, because you have to have unanimity to change that in the Constitution. Referendum will have to be put through, and I don't think Canadians are willing or ready to put through anything like that. Being a monarchy is not antiquated. The UN always released its list of the top 10 nations in which to live, and if you look at that list, according to the Human Standards of Living Index, 8 of those top 10 countries are monarchies. Only the USA and Iceland are on there as being republics. Japan, Norway, Sweden, the UK, Australia, Canada, they're all on this list. Being a monarchy does not mean that we're antiquated. Constitutional monarchies are very progressive, very democratic. No one says that Sweden or Belgium are not democratic countries.
The Minister of Heritage, he's only 35. They're going to Prince Edward Island, where Premier Giz is the youngest premier. So forget Star Trek, The Next Generation. This is Canada, the next generation.
Canadians were taken aback, sir, when the Queen arrived in Halifax and said it felt good to be home. Speak to us about what she meant by that.
Because the Queen is a Canadian. The Queen personifies the Canadian state. She is the head of state. The GG is her representative. When she was in America in the 1950s with President Eisenhower, she said, "I'm going home to Canada tomorrow," at a reception that she held at the Canadian Embassy in Washington as Queen of Canada. She is very much Canadian. Her mother, too, loved Canada more than any other of the realms, and she wore her maple leaf brooch throughout the war. The royal family have a deep and abiding affection for this country. They visited Canada more than any other country in the Commonwealth. And I think you'll see through this royal tour that deep and abiding respect which Canadians have for their sovereign, and which the sovereign has for Canada, and which has been demonstrated time and time again through the speeches that she has made. There's a constant thread of clear affection for the Canadian people.